This is a massive foreign policy disaster for Russia. Essentially, in the last year, not only Venezuela, but Syria and now possibly Iran, key Russian allies in the world, key Russian tools to push back against the West, have all met disaster. This is on Putin. And this is a humiliation for himself and his leadership. This is a humiliation for Russia, and it's frankly something not mentioned much in the past few days. It's a massive setback for the oligarchs in the Kremlin who profit from oil and other more nefarious transactions with Venezuela and countries like that. So this is almost irredeemably a bad.
Now, Russia has condemned the US's actions in Venezuela and urged the immediate release of Nicolas Maduro during the emergency UN Security Council meeting held this afternoon. Here is Russia's ambassador to the UN, Vasily Nebenzia, speaking earlier.
We firmly condemn the US act of armed aggression against Venezuela in breach of all international legal norms. Conflict between the United States and Venezuela need to be resolved through dialogue. And this is precisely what is enshrined in the UN Charter, for purposes and the principles of which a number of states in recent years have begun to apply selectively, depending upon the political landscape.
Well, Maduro has been a long-time ally of the Kremlin, with Russia's foreign minister pledging support for his regime in the last few weeks. This all comes as the US continues its negotiations over peace in Ukraine. Well, Dr Donald Jensen is a former diplomat at the US Embassy in Moscow and a professor at the Johns Hopkins University. Donald, thank you so much for joining us. I wonder how Vladimir Putin will interpret the events this weekend. Will he be shocked? Will he be assessing his position? What do you expect?
Well, I think shocked is a good word. That applies not only to Putin, but the entire Russian leadership. Stunned would be another word. This is a massive foreign policy disaster for Russia. Essentially, in the last year, not only Venezuela, but Syria and now possibly Iran, key Russian allies in the world, key Russian tools to push back against the West, have all met disaster. This is on Putin. And this is a humiliation for himself and his leadership. This is a humiliation for Russia, and it's frankly something not mentioned much in the past few days. It's a massive setback for the oligarchs in the Kremlin who profit from oil and other more nefarious transactions with Venezuela and countries like that. So this is almost irredeemably a bad disaster for Russia. Now it's on Putin. He's got to do something more than just offer weak language at the United Nations.
Yeah. There is a significant oil trade, isn't there, between Russia and Venezuela? It might be disguised somewhat, so it might be that the oil says it's come from somewhere else, but there is significant trade there, isn't there? How does Vladimir Putin navigate this then? He doesn't want to get on Donald Trump's bad side. He potentially doesn't want to stick his neck out too much because of the ongoing peace negotiations in Ukraine. What is more important to Donald Trump, do you think? Is it that he gets a good deal on Ukraine?
Well, I think
is it that he sticks up for Russia?
Work, Go on. Correctly highlight them. First of all, I would note that the immediate, let's call it, oligarchic class around Putin profits from Venezuelan oil, and it's part of the way Putin balances the forces around him. This now deprives a key source of resources from Mr. Sechin, who's a key ally of Putin, which Putin has to compensate for in some way. However, I think we've seen also as well that Putin does not have the tools to push back really in Ukraine or anywhere else in the way that the United States has. This highlights once again that beneath all the talk, the bluffing, the disastrous invasion of Ukraine, there's really not a lot behind the curtain once push comes to shove. So Putin has a lot to think about, a lot on his plate, and I think that Trump, from what we can tell, is still going to push for a peace settlement in Ukraine, but Trump will now be strengthened by the perception that America can do this if things don't go the way the U.S. president wants.
Yeah, and look, we can add into this context what's happened from the fall of Bashar al-Assad in Syria to a weakened Iran as well. Suddenly, the Kremlin's sphere of influence is weakening, although many doubted that actually Putin would come to the aid of Maduro. It would never go that far. We've also heard from Donald Trump on Air Force One talking about that alleged Ukrainian attack on Putin's residence. This is what the US president said.
I don't believe that strike happened.
Right. So Putin had said in that phone call to you that that strike happened. You came out and said that, and you believed Putin. There was some criticism.
There is something that happened fairly nearby, but had nothing to do with this.
Why did you believe Putin in that moment and then go say that about you?
Because nobody knew at that moment. I mean, that was the first I heard about it.
So why not?
He said that his house was attacked. We don't believe that happened. We just hope that Russia and Ukraine get it settled.
So that's interesting. So Donald Trump came out and condemned the Ukrainian attack on the Russian president's residence, but now Donald Trump said it never happened. And you heard his reasoning there in that clip. He didn't have the information to hand. Something fairly significant happened nearby. I don't know what that's about. How do you interpret this?
Well, first of all, I don't think we should put too much into President Trump's earlier comments about the Russians didn't do it, because his intelligence community, I assume, have to go over the evidence, provide him with an accurate assessment as best they can of what happened in this attack. Then I think he probably was convinced by that evidence. It's hard to say. So President Trump, as president, and subject to a lot of informational sources, is free to change his mind once he gets a convincing case one way or the other. I think that happens here. But I would caution people comparing that with the Venezuelan issue, that I think one thing we've seen, both from President Putin, other leaders around the world like Xi in China, but also from President Trump, there's no real intellectual need to be consistent in every instance. You don't have to convince Venezuela with Ukraine, excuse me. You don't have to say Putin did this here and he won't do it elsewhere. Excuse me.
Okay.
I think the peace process, such as it is, will continue on track, and Putin is not about to abandon his bottom line in Ukraine, which is control over the country. President Trump and his administration can react as they would. However,
Donald
I go back to
Jensen.
my initial point. This is a stunning development, a stunning setback for Putin's foreign policy. And now every time Putin acts tough, which he has a lot the last couple of days, people are now going to ask themselves, is this all rhetoric? Can he do what the United States wants? Excuse me.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. Really appreciate your analysis. I hope you stop sneezing soon, bless you. I've never been interrupted live on air by sneezes before, apart from my own. Dr Donald Jensen, thank you, former diplomat at the US Embassy in Moscow and professor at the Johns Hopkins University. Just really interesting context on Russia there.